Serious, what is the creepiest unexplained experience you ever had? I was stationed in Seoul, South Korea several years ago. I was taking a shower in my room, and when I got out, the word leave was written in small letters in the fog on the bathroom mirror. I didn't have a roommate because NCOs got their own private rooms. A little freaked out, I decided to do exactly that. Leave. I went off post for some Korean barbecue and wandered the city a bit. I came back a couple hours later to find the barracks was evacuated and half burned to the ground. The fire was pinpointed to faulty electrical wiring that caught some insulation on fire inside the walls. Something knew it was going to happen, and to this day, whatever that something was, it didn't want me in the middle of it. I'd gladly thank who or whatever it is if they'd give me the chance, but it's been years and I still have no idea. When my son was about 2 or 3, he wouldn't go to sleep, so I let him in my bed. My husband was asleep, so I told my boy he had to look at his books quietly while I read mine. He was good for a bit, but then he started reading the book. Actually reading the words out loud. Slowly. He couldn't read, and it was a newer book we hadn't read to him yet. It wasn't memorization. I asked him how he knew what it said, and he replied, "My friend John is telling me." Scared the shit out of me. 2008 I was 18, and my brother, Chris, was 16. I also have a brother, James, who was 5 at the time. We had just moved into an older house that used to be 3 apartments. We just about finished unpacking and we designated rooms. James's room was directly above the living room with the staircase. James went up to discover his new room, and Chris and I took a short walk around the neighborhood. We got back and were sitting in the living room, just talking. My mom says she's going to get pizza for dinner, and leaves. She took a fairly long time, which is normal for her. I think she really enjoys the small breaks she gets when she can leave the house without James, and I never object to babysitting. Besides, James is plenty occupied with his new room. Chris and I are just talking in the living room. James is super excited about his new bedroom. We hear him running and stomping around upstairs, opening and closing doors. Sometimes he slams the doors pretty hard, but whatever, he's a kid. I assumed he fell asleep since the noise stopped eventually. I hear my mom's car pull up. I get up to meet her in the kitchen. My mom comes in, carrying soda. James follows directly behind her, carrying the food, yelling, "Pizza time." She took him with her to get dinner, confirmed by my mom. Chris and I just looked at each other, taking too long to comprehend what was happening. I lived in that house for 4 years, and that was the only time something really freaked me out. Stopped for the night at a motel in the middle of Pennsylvania, but was too tired initially to care about how shady the place feels. It was still a chain hotel, but you had to drive through a long, unlit road to get to the entrance. I'm in the bathroom hand washing a shirt and felt a coldness up my back. I ignored it at first, but then felt weird and was creeped out by then. I bounced out of the bathroom to calm down. I finally see it. Blood on the wall. Wasn't much, but it was there, dried. My BF had the idea to push a chair up against the doorknob so we'd sleep, knowing we'd be a bit safer. It must have been 3 or 4 a.m. when we woke to someone trying to open our door. It wasn't even like a drunk person stumbling around looking for his room. It was a quieter, stealthy, attempted break-in. Whoever it was tried and couldn't get in and left us alone. There wasn't much sleeping the rest of the night. I was driving down a dark back road with zero light aside from my headlights when I was 16. I was with my best friend and we were joking and being teenagers when he says to me to look out for this box that was in the road. What I saw was a box slowly inching across the road. Now, this was a night with no wind in the PNW. There was clearly something in the box. I approached slowly, thinking maybe a raccoon or cat was stuck under the box and needed help. As I'm pulling alongside it, my friend starts getting a little freaked out. I look at him, car is stopped now, and I'm like, "Chill dude, we can free it," and he starts begging me to drive. I look over and I see that it's not a box at all. It's just a piece of cardboard, stood up on end, just inching towards our car slowly. We were right next to it, so there were no strings pulling it, and there was no wind, so it couldn't be that. It took a second to register that what I was seeing wasn't normal, and once it did, I drove so fast out of there. To this day I have no clue what that was. It was like 2 a.m., I took my clothes off and went to sleep. A minute later something hit me at my head. It was one of my socks. When I take them off I throw them in a corner of my room, so someone threw it back at me. But there was no one in my room, was alone 100%. May not sound so scary, but it was for me. No, there were no fans in the room. No wardrobes or similar around my bed. I get insomnia. It was one of those nights, and I was sitting out on my back porch at about 4 a.m. smoking a cigarette. It was one of those eerie nights where there is absolutely no breeze and it's just completely quiet out. We have woods behind our house, and as I was sitting there I see this person making his way through the canopy of the trees, like jumping from tree to tree, 30 or 40 feet up in the air. I was absolutely stunned and just sat there dumbly, too afraid and confused to even get up and run inside the house. This person or thing or whatever it was stops directly behind my house and looks at me. At this point it's about 50 feet away and maybe 40 feet up in the air. It pauses for about 5 seconds staring in my direction. I'm absolutely certain that it wasn't an animal. Its body was human shaped and it definitely wasn't a raccoon, bear or any of the other things people have suggested it might have been. But the way it was moving through the trees definitely was not human. No human, I don't care how adroit they were, could move like that. It was too dark to make out much detail of the face, clothing or anything like that. After about 5 seconds of looking at me, it turns away and takes off the same way it had been going before, just leaping from tree to tree at a fast pace. Within a few more seconds it was out of sight. One night I woke up to seeing my ex crouching in the closet. The closet was open and in full view of the bed. Of course I asked him what the hell he was doing in the closet. He just kept smiling like crazy and talking really sweetly to me, saying it was fun and I should come in too. I kept telling him no, he needed to just come back to bed. And then, after a few minutes, my ex walked into the bedroom from the bathroom, asking who I was taking to. Mr. Closet X disappeared and I never saw him again, but a lot of other weird crap happened in that house. I went camping with 2 friends a few years ago. We went pretty far away from civilization. The nearest town had a population of 30 people and was an hour away from the lake we were at. It was cool. I usually try to get away while camping, but this was the most extreme to date and you could feel it. During the first night the 3 of us were sleeping in the tent when I woke up to the noise of something brushing against the tent. The tent was around 5 feet tall at its peak and whatever was in our sight was brushing against it near the top. I have never in my life been filled with such true fear. I've camped a lot and have had run-ins with bears and other animals and have been scared before, but this feeling was different. There was something extra unnerving about this. I stayed laying there completely still with my heart beating out of my chest as whatever this was kept methodically brushing against the tent. It wasn't making much other noise other than going back and forth on the tent. I put my finger up to my face and made the shh gesture before slowly poking my friend, who was sleeping facing me, awake. He heard the noise immediately and his face dropped. He was wide awake looking at me as we just stared at each other wide-eyed. He spent a lot of time growing up on a reserve in the accompanying mostly untouched land in coastal BC, but later explained never experiencing anything like it. So we laid there for a minute wide awake, practically shaking with fear, and then next thing we know we both woke up in the morning. We woke up at the same time and immediately started asking what the hell that was last night and what happened. We both felt so awake at the time and were having trouble understanding how we just fell asleep. We explained it to our other friend as he awoke to us frantically recapping the evening. When we left the tent and went back to the site everything looked normal. There was a half-full box of Ritz crackers that we left out, our bad, untouched. The one thing that looked different is we had left a stack of red plastic cups out of the table and they were all melted on one side to the point where we couldn't pull them out cause they had a new indented mold. It blew our minds. We spent the whole day trying to figure out possibly how that could have occurred. It made no sense. One of my friends fell very ill as the day went on. We decided to leave that site after that next night and camp the other 2 nights of our planned trip at a more populated site closer to home as we all very uneasy about what had transpired. I'm not even sure what I think happened. All I know is that is the creepiest feeling I've ever felt. Whenever myself and the friend who I woke up get together, the conversation ends up on that night always with the quote, "What the hell happened that night?" I went to my backyard to take my dog out to the bathroom one night over the summer and I also had to pee, so I went over by a tree to relieve myself. While I was peeing, I heard someone whistle. I thought it was just my imagination or the neighbors, but they whistled again and I realized they were standing behind my pig pen, which is about 3 feet tall, in some bushes. I froze in fear for about 10 seconds until I yelled for my dog and ran inside. I told my dad, the only other person home, so he went outside with a gun and a flashlight, but they were gone. The next day I went out there, I noticed the bush's limbs were pushed back and like broken off in some places right where they were standing. I still have no idea who it was. Lol. Scared the shit out of me. I have another unexplained thing. One night when I was like 10, I was camping with some relatives on their property and was looking up at the night sky. All of a sudden the stars started trading places and moving around. I thought it was just my eyes because I was tired, but then my uncle was like, "Oh shit." He said he seen the same thing and so did everyone else there. That was creepy as hell too. I'm a little late to the show, but I'll throw mine out there. When I was a little kid about 5 to 6, I was sleeping alone in my bedroom, which I usually shared with my older sister who was away that night. I had a lamp above the side of my bed. This is important for the story. Anyway, I went to sleep and woke up needing to go to the restroom late at night, which was across the hall. So I get out of bed and see something out of the corner of my eye. It's this hairy monster looking thing sitting cross-legged on the floor below the night light on the side of the bed. This is the only time in my life I felt like I needed to scream but nothing would come out. I was frozen in fear. The monster grabbed me and put me on his lap face down and bit my lower back hard. Next thing I know I wake up and I'm hurting on my back and I get up and look out the window. I'd quiet, I thought maybe I'd see something. I didn't see anything and thought I dreamt it and went back to sleep. Next day my mom is putting a shirt on me and freaks out and say, "What happened to your back?" I looked and sure enough there was a bloody scab in the shape of a bite. I told her the story and she said she believed me always. Still to this day I'd what that creature was and I've never seen it again even 20 years later. I still remember it like yesterday though. I visited St. Augustine when I was about 9 years old with my family and some friends. While we were there we went to the Castillo de San Marcos, a Spanish fort built in the late 1600s. In the fort there is a corner room with no windows called the Black Room. It was used to store weapons but was walled up for a few hundred years, and when they opened it up again they found human skeletons in the room, meaning that they had been walled up alive. So I was alone in this part of the fort with my mom. As she was reading the description of the room I was crouching down and looking into the room. There was a small arch to go into it. There was clearly no one else in the room, and as I said before, no windows. I suddenly felt a powerful burst of wind come shooting out of the room and go right through me. I'm not exaggerating, it felt like it went in one side of my body and out the other. I ran from one side of the fort to the other in about 30 seconds. I probably would have set a world record if someone had been timing me. I was really scared. Anyway, a bit after that we went into the room with a big group of people and nothing scary happened. Years later I was watching the Travel Channel around Halloween time and they had a documentary about Halloween attractions around the world. After that was done, Ghost Adventures came on. I usually don't watch shows like that because I've never found them very interesting, but this episode was about the Castillo de San Marcos, so I decided to watch it. In the episode they go into the same room and while in the room the host stops talking mid-sentence and says, "Oh my god, I just felt like a burst of wind go through me." Needless to say I had goosebumps all over after seeing that on TV. I still get goosebumps while talking about it. I get it if you don't believe me, because I probably wouldn't believe it if it hadn't happened to me. But that was the creepiest thing that has happened to me that I can't explain. Went to visit the Myrtles plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana with my family and some family friends. We were going down there to go to the Angola rodeo, and we all decided to take a tour of the plantation the day before the rodeo. Our group included 6 adults, and 7 kids, 3 10-year-olds, an 8-year-old, 2 6-year-olds, and me, 14 at the time. The moment we arrived on the plantation it felt like a haze started to hang on me. My mom told me later I seemed out of it. I felt like I was in a dream the whole time. Floating from place to place. I barely remember the tour. But what's weird is, I don't remember anything after we left. We have pictures from the plantation, all pretty creepy, and after. I don't remember going to the Angola prison to tour the museum. I don't remember the rodeo. I do remember, though, dreaming of the plantation. Like I was still there. Trapped. I even developed severe ulcers in my mouth. Just, randomly. But I didn't realize that, until we got home. My mom told me I only complained about them, once the whole weekend. It was when we ate at a Mexican place and I was eating salsa. For weeks after I still felt out of it. I still dreamt of the plantation. It only stopped after I told my mom and she told me that when I started to feel that way, to tell whatever maybe stuck to me, to go away. I'm not sure if that was what finally gave me peace. But anytime I talk or think about it, it's like I'm reaching for the memory, but I can't reach it. The Myrtles plantation is definitely a cursed area. If you have the time to read about it, please do. But if you're ever in St. Francisville, Louisiana, don't go. It definitely feels like a gateway to hell. When I was in 6th grade, me and a friend came back to school from a race. We went to our class and found it locked with all chairs stacked. We were confused and checked both the gym and outside, no sign of our class. We checked our classroom again just to make sure, nothing. We went to the office and asked where our class was and they just kinda looked at us like we had 3 heads and told us they were in the classroom. We told them no, but they told us to check again. There was my class, sitting in chairs listening to the teacher lecture them. I don't know what happened there, but it was pretty scary. I used to get sleep paralysis every day my first year of college. Only happened in my dorm room. Every time was different. Sometimes it was just a dark cloud or entity sitting on my chest so I couldn't breathe, but it just felt like pure evil. I don't have any other way to describe it. Another time the entity was a little girl. Again she sat on my chest and was touching my eyes and my face while screaming in my ear. I could see and feel and hear everything. It was definitely the most terrifying stage of my life. I don't nap anymore. Sleep paralysis is semi-explained, but I never got a great explanation from a doctor. Still get it maybe once a year. My mother and I were watching TV in the living room. Dad and my siblings had all gone to bed. We had a big family barbecue that day and everyone was hit pretty hard by the sun, so they were all tired as hell. Mom and I were night owls though, so we were up watching late night cartoons. We were watching reruns of Angry Beavers, and suddenly the TV goes blank, not static but blank. Not abnormal. Oystar was known for being shitty, but this time was different. A very noticeable hand and arm, made up of faint reds, blues and greens, flicks across the screen twice in rapid succession. Fingers and all, very visible and noticeable against the contrast of the black. I sort of freaked out, but Mum calmed me down instantly when she said sometimes the people that run the TV channels like to play jokes on people watching late at night. I believed that for years, but years later Mum told me she made that up. She had absolutely no clue what caused it to happen, what caused the face to appear. I reminded her that it was an arm and hand, and she told me that wasn't what she saw. She saw the face of what looked like an old friend of hers that died horrifically in a car accident when she was younger. Mum was in the car with them when it flipped. They went too fast over a crest and lost control. The right passenger window was all the way down, so her friend was decapitated violently on the spot, his face degloved and left inside the car and his arm torn off completely. I try not to think about it. This was about 18 years ago. Still gives me goosebumps to this day. My friend and I were about 13 or 14 years old. We snuck out in the middle of the night and were standing out in front of his garage smoking some of his grandma's cigarettes. We lived in a regular suburban kind of neighborhood. So anyways, a few houses down we see this figure sort of moving its way under the street light. It was moving, almost in a waddling type of walk on two big legs. It was about 3 or 4 feet tall, had pointy ears, looked sort of like a kangaroo but long arms almost to the ground. Basically it looked like a kangaroo-wolf mixture walking on 2 legs but with big lanky arms. We were scared shitless, and it's waddling towards us and we are like, wow, what the heck is that? And I remember just freezing, not knowing what to do. Then all of a sudden this thing boom hits the ground running on all 4 legs, moving faster than I've ever seen anything move, and poof, it vanished into the night. After some research, apparently there is maybe some ghost dog demon thing in my old hometown area apparently. My friend and I still refer to it as the creature, and of course no one believes us. There's a place here in Alabama in my town called Crybaby Hollow, and it's just this old bridge in the middle of a forest where a woman drowned her baby a good while ago. Can't remember who exactly, but I used to think it was just an old tale parents told their kids. Well, my friend and I parked our car on the bridge and decided to see what was what. They say the spirit of the baby is still around, and if you say cry baby cry, you'll hear a baby scream in the distance, wanting for its mom. We turn off the car and the lights and sit there with the windows rolled down and yell out those words. For 15 minutes, nothing happened, not even a bug chirped. Right when we were about to turn the key in the truck, my friend and I hear music from a child's toy. It was a faint pop goes the weasel melody. Next thing we know, we hear a baby wailing in the distance, and there is no one that lives in that forest. It is all condemned and we are a good 20 miles from the nearest civilization. It's not as cool of a story as the others, but it makes my blood run cold whenever I hear a baby cry now. When I was a freshman in college, I was going through my first major bout of depression. I was crying myself to sleep most nights, and during the day I would go to class and then immediately go back to my dorm and sleep. One particularly rough day I went down for a nap, and when I was almost asleep I heard someone open my dorm room door. Not unusual because my friends on my floor would visit. However, then I heard someone approach my bed and I figured it was a friend and just continued to sleep, assuming they'd figure it out. Then I felt the softest, most gentle kiss on my forehead. In a sleepy stupor I smiled and immediately nodded off. When I woke up I snapped back into reality and immediately went to all my friends in my dorm and said, "Okay guys, very funny. Who kissed me?" No one had any idea what I was talking about. Looking back now I really think it was a ghost watching over me and comforting me in my time of need. Or it was a real human being who totally creeped on me. I was standing in the kitchen having a conversation with my dad late one evening when suddenly we hear the loud, and nearby, sound of breaking glass. We weren't sure where it came from and we did rounds of the house, inside and out, looking for broken windows. We found nothing. The next morning I went to get my breakfast, and when I opened the cupboard where our dishes are kept, glass poured out and onto the counter. It turned out that all of our glasses, about 12 of them, exploded simultaneously inside the cupboard while we were in the room that night. One day while doing my laundry, one of the lights blew out in my basement. My basement is set up so that the laundry room is split from the other side of the basement with a wall and a door. In order to get upstairs you have to exit the laundry room and go through the other part of the basement. So the light blew in the other part, not the laundry room. As it was the only light on that side, it was pretty dark. I finished the laundry I had to do while dreading the walk through the dark basement. I exit the laundry room, get halfway through the basement, and I hear a loud cackle. Imagine a sound people make when they imitate a witch. Take that and imagine that the witch had been smoking for 50 years, making her voice deeper and hoarser. That is what I heard, clear as day, right behind me. I did not hesitate to bolt for the stairs. I waited until my father got home and then changed the bulb. I have yet to hear that cackle since, and I have not told a single person in the house about it.